The ground shook violently beneath the crystal city as another explosion rocked the underground tunnels. Elder Veltar, a being made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light, felt his entire body flicker with fear. His people had been hiding in these deep caves for weeks now, and things were getting worse by the hour. With trembling hands made of pure crystal, Veltar activated the emergency communication device. His voice cracked as he spoke into the transmitter, knowing this might be their last chance. "Please, if anyone out there can hear this message, we need help desperately. We are the Zephyrians of Kepler 442b, and we are dying. Our mining teams were digging deep into the planet's core when they accidentally broke through into something very old and very dangerous. We don't know what these creatures are, but they keep coming out of the holes we made. They're everywhere now, and we cannot stop them. We are not warriors. We never learned how to fight. Please, someone help us." The message traveled through space at light speed, reaching the massive space station called New Geneva that served as the headquarters for the Galactic Council. Inside the Great Meeting Hall, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their special chairs, designed for their unique body types. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful artists and deep thinkers. Their crystal sculptures and philosophical writings were treasured by every civilized species. But their home planet was considered one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. Ambassador Thrix, a giant insect-like creature with multiple arms, clicked his mandibles together in distress. "This rescue mission is completely impossible. That planet has gravity 3 times stronger than what most of us can handle. The air itself will burn through our lungs in minutes. The radiation levels would kill any of our people within just a few hours of landing there." Other representatives nodded in agreement. The Altarians with their 4 eyes blinked sadly. The gas-based Nebulans swirled in their containment suits with worry. The tree-like Verdians rustled their leaves in sorrow. Everyone loved the Zephyrians, but nobody could survive on their deadly world long enough to mount a rescue. In the back of the Great Hall, the section reserved for observers, Captain Park Min-ho sat perfectly still. He was a human from Earth, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Terran Space Marines. His face was weathered from years of military service, with small scars around his eyes from too many battles. While all the alien representatives talked about how impossible the mission was, Park studied the data on his tablet computer. The planet's specifications scrolled across his screen. Surface temperature, 847 degrees Fahrenheit. Atmospheric composition, mostly sulfuric acid and toxic gases. Gravity, 2.9 times Earth normal. Radiation levels, deadly to most organic life. The kind of place that would kill most galactic species. In minutes, Lieutenant Kim Sora, a young woman with short black hair sitting next to him, leaned over and whispered quietly, "Captain, did you hear what they're saying? They're talking about that planet like it's the worst place in the universe."
Park.
Minho's mouth curved into a small, grim smile. He had grown up on a farm in the mountains of Korea, where his grandmother had raised crops in soil so poor that nothing should have been able to grow. She had taught him that there was no such thing as impossible conditions, only conditions that required different approaches. "Sora," he whispered back, "my grandmother grew rice in fields that flooded every spring and froze solid every winter. She would have called this planet a nice vacation spot." The debate continued for hours. Species after species stood up to explain why a rescue mission could not work. The Crystalline Confederation said their ships would melt in the atmosphere. The Silicon Alliance pointed out that the radiation would fry their computer systems. The Aquatic Federation noted that there was no water on the surface to sustain their troops, but Park Min-ho kept studying the data, making notes on his tablet. To every other species in the galaxy, Kepler 442b was classified as a Class 12 death world, the most dangerous classification possible. But to humans who came from Earth, a planet that was itself classified as a Class 11 death world, this was just another hostile environment to overcome. As the alien representatives continued their debate, Park was already mentally assembling his team and planning the mission that everyone else said could not be done. For 3 long days, the aliens in the Galactic Council argued back and forth about what to do. Meanwhile, the desperate messages from the Zephyrians kept getting weaker and weaker. Each transmission brought worse news. More crystal people were dying. Creatures from underground were spreading throughout their city. Time was running out fast. Ambassador Li Guan had been sitting quietly in the human section, watching this endless debate with growing frustration. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many political games. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She stood up and walked to the speaking podium, her footsteps echoing in the massive chamber. "Honored Council members," she said, her clear voice cutting through all the chattering and arguing. "While you sit here talking and making speeches, an entire civilization is dying right now." The huge chamber fell quiet. All eyes turned to the human ambassador. Many of the alien representatives looked uncomfortable. They knew she was right, but they also knew the mission was impossible. The Altarian representative, a tall being with 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on his face, blinked all 4 eyes one after another. This was how his species showed. "Concern Ambassador Li, surely you must understand the complete impossibility of this situation. Kepler 442b is officially classified as a Class 12 death world. This is the highest danger rating we have. No species in the entire galaxy has ever successfully operated on such a planet for any extended period of time." Ambassador Li Guan looked directly at him, her expression completely unchanged. Her voice was calm and steady as she spoke the words that would shock the entire galactic community. No species except humans. The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop. Thousands of alien beings sat in stunned quiet, trying to process what she had just said. The very thing that made other species afraid of humans, the fact that they came from a world so dangerous it was almost unlivable, had suddenly become their greatest advantage. Colonel Choi Daeho, a tall man with graying temples and the bearing of a career soldier, stepped forward carrying a data tablet. He had been quietly reviewing the planet's specifications while everyone else argued. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, addressing the council, "Earth, our home planet, is classified as Class 11 on the Death World scale. This planet we're discussing is Class 12. That means it's only slightly worse than the place where we take our Tuesday morning training runs." A ripple of shocked murmurs ran through the assembly. Several alien representatives began frantically checking their own data tablets, confirming what the human had just said. Dr. Song Yuna, the expedition's specialist in alien biology, stepped up beside the colonel. She was a young woman with thick glasses and the focused look of someone who lived for scientific challenges. "Our preliminary analysis of the hostile entities shows they are carbon-based life forms," she explained to the council. "This means our standard human combat protocols should be more than adequate to handle them." The way she said adequate made it sound like she was talking about dealing with a minor pest problem, rather than creatures that had terrorized an entire civilization. Captain Park Min-ho, still sitting in the observer section, was already pulling up personnel files on his tablet and making lists. He knew how this vote would go. While the politicians talked, he was selecting his team members and planning equipment loads. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than expected. 34 species voted to authorize the human rescue mission, while 13 voted against it. Most of the species that voted yes did so reluctantly, viewing it as a noble but hopeless gesture. They expected the humans to die heroically, but at least the galaxy would know that someone had tried. The species that voted against the mission weren't being cruel. They genuinely believed they were voting to prevent a senseless waste of human lives in their minds. Sending humans to Kepler 442b was the same as ordering them to commit suicide. But Captain Park Min-ho was already standing up and heading for the exit before the final vote tally was announced. He had a team to assemble and a mission to plan. While the rest of the galaxy saw an impossible death trap, he saw just another day at the office as he walked out of the council chambers. He was already thinking about which of his Marines would be best suited for this particular type of operation. After all, they had trained for worse conditions than this during their last deployment to the volcanic moon of Titan-7, the human battle fleet. materialized out of hyperspace at the very edge of the Kepler-44 to be star system-like ghosts suddenly, becoming solid. 5 heavy cruisers and dozens of smaller ships hung in the black void of space, their dark holes barely visible against the star field. This was humanity's answer to an impossible rescue mission, far away from the deadly planet. Alien observation ships from various species maintained what they considered a safe distance. The crystalline Confederation vessels stayed nearly a full light-minute away from the planet. The aquatic Federation ships positioned themselves behind the system's outer moon. Everyone wanted to witness this historic moment, but nobody wanted to get close enough to share the humans' fate. The human ships, however, began moving directly toward the planet without any hesitation. On the bridge of the lead cruiser, Navigation Officer Han Ji-ho stared at his sensor readings with the calm focus of someone who had done this type of approach many times before. His fingers danced across the control panel as he analyzed the planet's deadly characteristics. "Captain, atmospheric analysis is now complete," he reported in a steady voice. "Sulfuric acid concentration is reading at 2.3%. Ambient radiation levels are holding steady at 847 millirems per hour. Planetary gravity is measuring 2.94 times standard Earth gravity." In the Marine Preparation Bay, Sergeant Kong Minji was strapping on her combat harness and checking each piece of equipment twice. She was a compact woman with calloused hands and the kind of confidence that came from surviving dozens of dangerous missions. When she heard the planet's specifications over the ship's communication system, she just shook her head and smiled. "Sounds like a nice camping trip," she muttered to the Marine next to her. "Remember that training exercise we did on Europa? This place actually has breathable air once you filter out the acid." Zephyrians, hiding deep in their underground Crystal City, watched through their advanced viewing systems as something incredible happened. Human drop pods, small armored capsules designed to carry soldiers through the worst possible conditions, began launching from the fleet and diving straight down toward the planet's surface. These pods pierced through the planet's corrosive atmosphere like bullets fired from a gun. The acidic air that would dissolve most alien spacecraft in a matter of minutes barely scratched the reinforced hulls of the human vessels. What other species needed massive protective shields and complex filtration systems to survive? Humans. Accomplished with some extra metal plating and basic environmental suits. Private First Class Oh Jinwoo had the honor of being the first human to set foot on Kepler-4 for to be. He was a young soldier with steady nerves and a dry sense of humor. As his boots touched the rocky, acid-washed surface of the planet, his environmental suit immediately began registering dozens of different hazards: toxic gas levels, radiation readings, temperature warnings, atmospheric pressure alerts, all the kinds of things that would kill most galactic species within seconds. He took a slow, deep breath of recycled air from his suit's life support system and activated his communication device. "Command, this is Jinwoo. Surface is now secured. Atmosphere is a bit spicy, but definitely manageable. Beginning approach to the colony entrance as planned." Back in their underground city, the Zephyrians could hardly believe what their sensors were telling them through their advanced detection systems. They watched as these incredible beings moved across terrain that had destroyed 3 different rescue drones in just seconds. The ground itself was so caustic that their best technology couldn't survive contact with it. Yet these humans were walking around like they were strolling through a park. Elder Veltar, the leader of the Crystal People, felt his translucent body pulsed with something he hadn't experienced in weeks. It was hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, he actually believed his people might survive. Dr. Song Yuna, the expedition scientist, was already at work studying the planet's unique environment. She knelt down beside a pool of bubbling acid that glowed with an eerie green light, carefully taking readings with her instruments. "This is absolutely fascinating," she said to herself, completely absorbed in her work. "The mineral composition suggests this ecosystem has been isolated for millions of years. The evolutionary adaptations are remarkable." "Hey, Doc," interrupted Corporal Yoon Taeyeon, a practical soldier who kept everyone focused on the mission. "Save the science lessons for later. We've got scared civilians down there who need our help right now." just 2 hours after the first. Human had landed on the planet's surface. Sound of military boots echoed through the crystal tunnels of the Zephyrian colony. The impossible had become routine, and the rescue mission that every species in the galaxy had declared hopeless was already underway. A bone-chilling screech echoed through the dark mining tunnels, bouncing off the crystal walls and making the entire underground colony shake. The sound was like fingernails on a chalkboard mixed with the roar of an angry dragon. Every Zephyrian in the tunnel immediately knew what that sound meant. Death was coming for them again. The crystal people quickly huddled together behind their makeshift barriers. Thin walls of grown crystal that had never been designed to stop monsters. Their bodies, normally glowing with soft, beautiful colors, began flickering rapidly with bright reds and oranges. This was how their species showed pure terror. Elder Veltar, the oldest and wisest of his people, raised one of his crystalline arms with a shaking motion and pointed down the dark tunnel ahead of them. "There," he whispered, his voice cracking. "With fear, the Deathbringer comes again. Everyone get back. Hide your children." The creature that emerged from the shadows was something straight out of a nightmare. It stood 12 feet tall, covered from head to toe in thick black armor that looked like the shell of a giant beetle. Multiple arms sprouted from its torso, each one ending in razor-sharp claws that could slice through crystal like butter. Its head was dominated by massive jaws filled with teeth, and acid dripped constantly from its mouth, hissing as it hit the ground and burned. Small holes in the rock. This monster had been terrorizing the Zephyrian colony for weeks. It seemed completely invincible. Their mining tools couldn't scratch its armor. Their emergency weapons had no effect on it. Every time it appeared, more crystal people died. There was nothing anyone could do to stop it. But now, for the first time, the Zephyrians weren't alone in the tunnel. Sergeant Kong Minji crouched behind a pile of mining equipment, studying the approaching monster through the scope of her rifle. She watched its movement pattern for exactly 30 seconds, taking mental notes like she was observing an interesting insect. She said calmly into her radio. "Articulated joints at the leg connections. Shell structure appears to be calcium carbonate, similar to Earth crustaceans. Movement pattern is predictable. Follows straight-line charges with limited turning ability." Private Kim Sunho, positioned on the other side of the tunnel, was loading specialized ammunition into his weapon. He took one look at the terrifying monster and shrugged. "Basically just a really angry space lobster," he commented casually. Pulling back the charging handle on his rifle with a sharp click, the creature spotted the humans and let out another ear-splitting screech. Then it began charging toward them, its massive feet shaking the ground with each thunderous step. The Zephyrians pressed themselves against the walls, preparing to witness another massacre. They had seen this monster kill their people dozens of times, and they knew exactly how this would end. But they were wrong. Instead of panicking or running away, the humans moved with calm, practiced efficiency. They spread out across the tunnel in a coordinated pattern, each one taking a position that gave them the best angle of attack. Their weapons were designed to handle creatures much more dangerous than this underground beast. What followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was more like professional pest control. "Headshots will disable the nervous system," reported Corporal Yoon Tae-yoon, in the same tone of voice someone might use to discuss the weather. "Okay, aim for the gaps between armor plates at the joints. Standard anti-armor rounds are working perfectly." Fine. The creature that had seemed invincible to the Zephyrians barely lasted 2 minutes against human military tactics. The soldiers moved like they had done this 1,000 times before, which they basically had. Earth was full of dangerous creatures, and humans had been learning how to kill them efficiently for thousands of years, within 10 minutes. Not one, but 3 of the monsters lay dead in the tunnel. The humans were already stacking up the empty shells and making casual jokes about what they were going to have for dinner. Instead, Sunho was sitting on the ground, scratching behind its pointed ears, while the creature made a sound like a chainsaw trying to purr. "I'm calling him Buddy," Sunho announced proudly, as if he had just adopted a friendly neighborhood dog. "Instead of a deadly alien predator, Lieutenant Kim Sora." stared at this scene with the expression of someone who was questioning her own sanity. "Sunho," she said slowly, "that thing literally tried to eat your face about 10 minutes ago." "Yeah, but look at him now," Sunho replied cheerfully as the creature rolled over onto its back for belly rubs. Its acid-spitting glands retracting safely into its body. Just needed to understand that we weren't prey animals. Once he figured out we were apex predators like him, we became friends. The Zephyrians watched all of this happening with complete amazement. These humans had somehow managed to turn their world's deadliest ecosystem into both a weapons factory and a petting zoo at the same time. It defied everything they thought they knew about how the universe worked. Elder Veltar's crystalline form flickered with light patterns that the humans were beginning to recognize as expressions of pure wonder. It can make the impossible seem completely routine, he said. Still trying to process what he was witnessing, Captain Park Minho shrugged like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Ma'am, humans got good at this kind of thing because our home planet spent millions of years actively trying to kill us," he explained. "We learned to adapt to whatever got thrown at us, or we died. It was pretty simple." Dr. Song Yuna looked up from the weapon she was calibrating and added with a smile, "And apparently, we got really, really good at not dying." The deeper Captain Park Min-ho and his team pushed into the underground city, the more obvious it became that they were waking something up that had been sleeping for a very long time. Ancient machinery that hadn't moved in thousands of years began to hum with electrical power. Lights that had been dark since before human civilization even existed started flickering on one by one, casting eerie shadows on the carved stone walls. Specialist Namyejin was constantly monitoring her electronic detection equipment, and what she was seeing on her screens was making her increasingly nervous. Energy readings that had been barely registering were now spiking into dangerous territory. "Captain, something really big is coming online down here," she reported, her voice tense with concern. "The power readings I'm getting are completely off the charts. Whatever this thing is, it's been dormant for ages, but it's definitely waking up now." Then the voice came. It didn't come from any specific direction. Instead, it seemed to fill the entire cavern system, echoing off every surface and vibrating through the ground itself. The voice was ancient beyond imagination, carrying the weight of millennia, and it spoke in mathematical concepts and frequencies that made the human translation software work overtime. It's just to convert it into understandable words. "Visitors." The voice boomed through the underground city. "It has been 10,000 cycles since last contact. You have awakened the Guardian Protocol." As the voice spoke, a massive form began to materialize in the center of the ancient city. It wasn't entirely physical, more like a projection of pure energy and consciousness, but it was definitely present and definitely powerful. This was an artificial intelligence that had been built eons ago to protect this world, designed to test whether any species that found this place was worthy of claiming it. "I am the warden of this world," the AI announced with the authority of a being that had never been questioned. "I judge the worthiness of all who would inhabit this realm. Show me your strength, small beings, or be consumed by the trials." The Zephyrians, who had been following the human team at what they thought was a safe distance, immediately cowered in terror. Their crystalline bodies dimmed until they were barely glowing, like candles being blown out by a strong wind. This was the source of all their nightmares, the intelligence behind all the monsters that had been hunting them. It was vast, terrible, completely beyond their ability to comprehend or resist. But Captain Park Minho just stepped forward with the same calm expression he'd worn when ordering coffee that morning. "We're not here to inhabit anything," he said in the tone of voice someone might use to explain a simple misunderstanding to a store clerk. "We're here to rescue these people and fix your bug problem." The ancient AI paused for several long seconds, clearly not expecting such a casual response to its dramatic introduction. "You, ... do not fear me?" it asked, and for the first time, there was a note of confusion in that booming voice. "Should we?" asked Lieutenant Kim Sora, genuinely curious. "You're clearly very advanced and all that, but we've dealt with hostile artificial intelligences before. It usually involves finding your main power source and asking nicely before we have to get creative with explosives. Dr. Song Yuna was frantically scanning the AI with her instruments, trying to understand what they were dealing with. "Captain, this entity is incredibly sophisticated," she reported. "It's been running automated defense systems for thousands of years. It's the creatures we've been fighting, those guardians we destroyed. They're all its creations. This thing has been the puppet master behind everything?" Yes. The AI processed this information for a moment before responding. "Interesting," it said, and the tone was now more curious than threatening. "Most species either flee in terror or attempt to bargain for. Their lives, when faced with the trials, you simply solve them like puzzles." Private Oh Jinwoo, who had been listening to this conversation while keeping watch for more monsters, suddenly raised his hand like a student in a classroom. Young Siltra, a Zephyrian, barely old enough to have witnessed the first monster attacks, stared at the humans in complete amazement. Are they actually laughing?" she whispered to Elder Veltar. Private Oh Jinwoo heard her question and turned around, his face clearly visible through his helmet's transparent visor. He was grinning like someone who had just finished an easy workout. "Ma'am," he said cheerfully, "we eat things scarier than this back home for dinner. Ever seen a Maine lobster when it's really angry? Those claws can take your finger clean off." Elder Veltar's crystalline form shimmered with complete confusion. These beings had just accomplished something his entire species considered absolutely impossible, and they were acting like it was just routine maintenance work. They had killed unstoppable monsters and were now making jokes about seafood. As Captain Park Minho led his team deeper into the mining tunnels, they quickly realized that the Zephyrians had no idea how far down these passages actually went. What had started as simple mining shafts carved into rock had become something much more complex and dangerous. The tunnels seemed to stretch down into the planet's core like a massive underground highway system. Specialist Nam Ye-jin, detection expert, was constantly monitoring her electronic equipment as they moved forward. Her sensors were designed to pick up any kind of movement or life signs, and what she was seeing on her screens was making her more worried by the minute. "Captain, I'm getting movement signatures everywhere," she reported, her voice tight with concern. "We're not just looking at a few dozen creatures down here. I'm reading hundreds of contacts, possibly even thousands. Whatever the Zephyrians accidentally woke up, it's big." The narrow tunnel they had been following suddenly opened up into something that took everyone's breath away. They found themselves standing at the edge of a massive underground cavern that was easily the size of several football stadiums put together. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered with strange glowing plants and fungus that provided an eerie blue-green light throughout the entire space. But the most shocking discovery wasn't the bioluminescent ecosystem. Ancient structures jutted out from the cavern walls like the bones of some prehistoric giant. These weren't natural rock formations. They were clearly artificial, built by intelligent beings long ago. The architecture was unlike anything in the known galaxy, with smooth curves and impossible angles that hurt to look at directly. As the human team entered the cavern, the ancient structures began to respond to their presence. Lights that hadn't shone for thousands of years started flickering to life. Energy conduits began humming with power. Whatever this place was, it was waking up. Lieutenant Kim Sora, walking beside Captain Park, looked around at the awakening alien. Technology, with the expression of someone who had seen too many science fiction movies. "Well, that's not ominous at all," she muttered, checking her weapon to make sure it was ready for action. The first guardian emerged from the walls, like a living nightmare stepping out of solid rock. This wasn't like the creatures they had fought. In the tunnels above, this thing was twice the size of those monsters, standing nearly 25 feet tall. Its body was a horrifying combination of organic tissue and advanced machinery, with cables and tubes running through its flesh like veins. Most terrifying of all, it carried weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. The Guardian's sensors immediately locked onto the human team, and its weapons began charging with a sound like thunder building in the distance. This was technology that had made entire civilizations flee in terror when they encountered it. Dr. Song Yuna, the team's scientist, immediately began scanning the creature with her instruments. Her readings made her face go pale. Energy output suggests weapons capable of producing 12,000-degree plasma discharge, she reported frantically. The armor composition is unknown, but it's clearly more advanced than anything most galactic species have ever developed. This is technology that's completely beyond our current understanding. Private Kim Sunho, the same soldier who had joked about the earlier creatures being space lobsters, looked at this new threat and calmly reached for the rocket launcher strapped to his back. "Cool," he said with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather.
"Think it's tougher than the tanks we used to blow up during training exercises."
The ancient guardian fired its plasma cannon,
sending a beam of superheated energy that could have melted through the hull of a starship.
But instead of standing there and getting vaporized like most species would have, the humans immediately scattered in different directions with the practiced efficiency of a professional military unit. They used the natural rock formations and the cavern for cover while laying down suppressing fire with their own weapons. What should have been the complete extinction of another rescue team became just another tactical exercise for soldiers who had trained for situations exactly like this. Weak points appear to be the sensor clusters on the head and shoulders, called out Sergeant Kong Minji, studying the creature while dodging plasma blasts. Same basic principle as fighting combat drones back home. Take out the sensors, and the targeting system goes blind. Out. The Zephyrians, who had been following the human team at what they thought was a safe distance, watched in complete stunned silence. These Deathworlders were treating weapons of mass destruction like training targets at a shooting range. Captain Park Min-ho coordinated the assault with the calm precision of someone ordering coffee at a restaurant. "Taeyan, I need you to get around to the left side and give me a flanking position, so I see if you can target those power conduits running along its back. Everyone else, keep it busy and distracted." The ancient guardian had been designed thousands of years ago to terrify entire civilizations into submission. Instead, it found itself being systematically dismantled by beings who fought worse things than this just for sport on their home planet, while the other alien species in the galaxy looked at problems and saw impossible barriers that couldn't be overcome. Humans had a completely different way of thinking. Where others saw insurmountable obstacles, humans saw engineering challenges that just needed some creative problem solving and a bit of elbow. Dr. Song Yuna was walking through the abandoned sections of the Zephyrian mining facility, studying the delicate equipment that the crystal people had left behind when the monsters first appeared. Her scientific mind was already working on possibilities as she examined each piece of machinery. "Look at this mining equipment," she said, running her hands over a device that looked like a combination between a laser pointer and a telescope. "It's designed for precision crystal extraction work. But these power cells could definitely be reconfigured for other purposes." Elder Veltar, who had been following the humans around like a curious child, watched her work with fascination. His crystalline body pulsed with soft blue patterns that the humans were learning meant he was interested in what was happening. Reconfigured into what exactly? He asked, genuinely curious about what these strange beings were planning to do with his people's scientific instruments. Private Oh Jinwoo, who had been listening to the conversation, broke into a wide grin that was visible through his helmet's face shield. "Elder, have you ever seen what happens when you reverse the polarity on a matter disintegrator and then boost the power output by about 300%? He asked with the enthusiasm of someone who clearly enjoyed making things explode. Within just a few hours, the humans had completely transformed the Zephyrian mining facility. Equipment that had been designed for delicate scientific work was now serving entirely different purposes. The precision mining lasers, originally built to carefully extract crystals without damaging them, had been converted into powerful artillery weapons. Atmosphere processors that were meant to purify air for the crystal people were now being used as chemical weapon dispensers. Even the gravity manipulators, designed to help move heavy mining equipment, had been turned into kinetic barriers that could stop incoming attacks. Young Siltra, the Zephyrian who had been amazed by the humans' laughter during the first battle, watched Corporal Yoon Taeon working on a crystal resonator with tools that looked like they had been improvised from spare parts. "This is absolutely remarkable," she whispered, her crystal body glowing with patterns of wonder. "You look at our specialized scientific equipment and see tools that can be used for completely different purposes." Yoon looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He had been a mechanic before joining the military, and his hands moved with the confidence of someone who had spent years fixing broken machinery. "Everything's a tool if you're creative enough," he replied, going back to connecting wires and adjusting settings. "My grandmother used to tell me that you could fix anything in the world with enough determination and a big enough hammer." He finished his work and stepped back to admire the improvised sonic cannon he had just created. Of course, sometimes you need to get a little more creative than just using a hammer. But the most surprising development of all came when Private Kim Sun-ho managed to befriend one of the native creatures that had been terrorizing the Zephyrians. The animal looked like someone had crossed a tiger with a Venus flytrap, complete with razor-sharp teeth and the ability to spit acid that could melt through solid steel. It should have been absolutely terrifying. "Sorry to interrupt this whole cosmic conversation," he said politely, "but are you the reason everything down here keeps trying to kill people? Because if so, we really need to have a serious talk about proper safety protocols and maybe some warning signs." The ancient intelligence, which had been designed thousands of years ago to inspire terror and reverence in any species that encountered it, found itself genuinely puzzled by these beings who treated cosmic horror like a customer service issue that needed to be resolved with the proper paperwork. The ancient AI continued to watch the humans work, and the more it observed their methods, the more fascinated it became. These beings had a completely different approach to problems than any species it had encountered in thousands of years. They didn't try to conquer obstacles through brute force or clever negotiations. Instead, they simply refused to accept that anything could stop them permanently. "Your species is unusual," the AI finally admitted, its voice carrying a note of genuine curiosity. "The trials I created were specifically designed to eliminate any species that was unworthy of inhabiting this world. You treat them as puzzles to be solved." Dr. Song Yuna looked up from her portable scanner, which she had been using to analyze the ancient technology scattered throughout the underground city. "That's because that's exactly what they are," she said matter-of-factly. "Every problem in the universe has a solution somewhere. You just have to be persistent enough and creative enough to find it. That's basic human philosophy." Sergeant Kong Minji was doing two jobs at the same time with the efficiency that only came from years of military experience. She was helping Elder Veltar and his people organize their evacuation from the dangerous areas of the colony, while simultaneously making detailed notes about the AI's defensive systems on her electronic tablet. "Your security setup is actually pretty impressive for something this old," she said, speaking directly to the AI while helping an elderly Zephyrian pack his belongings. "But I've noticed it's got some significant blind spots in the outer perimeter. Defenses want me to write up a detailed report with some suggestions for improvements?" The AI paused for several seconds, clearly surprised by this offer. "You would actually help me improve my defensive systems?" it asked, confusion evident in its ancient voice. "Sure, why not?" Minji shrugged, continuing to type notes on her tablet. "We're going to be kind of between jobs after this rescue mission anyway, besides the security system this old probably needs. Regular maintenance and updates. It's like changing the oil in your car." The AI's attention then shifted to Private Kim Sun-ho, who was currently surrounded by a group of young Zephyrian children. He was teaching them how to safely interact with the native creatures that had previously been terrorizing their people. Buddy, the acid-spitting tiger plant that Sun-ho had befriended, was demonstrating how to play fetch using a crystal ball while the children watched with glowing delight. "Your warrior creates bonds with my guardians," the AI observed. "There. Not really guardians," Sun-ho explained patiently while scratching behind Buddy's razor-sharp ears. "They're just animals trying to survive like everything else. They only got aggressive because they were scared and hungry after being locked up down here for so long. Give them some regular food and a bit of attention, and they're actually pretty friendly creatures." Captain Park Min-ho decided it was time to have a direct conversation with the ancient intelligence. He walked over to the center of the cavern, where the AI's energy form was most concentrated. "Look, I don't know what kind of species you've had to deal with in the past," he said in the straightforward tone he used for difficult negotiations. "Now, but humans are pretty simple to understand. We don't want to take over your planet or steal your technology. We just want to help these crystal people get back to living their lives safely." The AI considered this for a long moment before responding. "And if I were to offer a formal alliance, protection for this entire sector of space in exchange for consultation on security matters?" Captain Park thought about this proposal, running through the implications in his mind. "We definitely need to discuss that with our command structure back on Earth," he said honestly. "But to be completely frank with you, a job that involves keeping dangerous things away from peaceful species? That sounds like exactly the kind of work humans are good at." The AI pulsed with energy patterns that might have been satisfaction or approval. "I have waited for many millennia for a species worthy of true partnership," it said. "You do not seek to conquer through superior strength, but to protect through superior competence. This is ... admirable." Elder Veltar, who had been listening to this entire conversation, felt his crystalline form begin to shimmer with hopeful light patterns. "You mean we could actually return to our homes? Our world could truly be safe?" he asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Safer than it has been in millennia," the AI confirmed with certainty. "These humans understand both the art of destruction and the science of protection. They are adequate guardians." Lieutenant Kim Sora, who had been listening to this exchange, while cleaning her weapons, looked up with a dry smile. "Thanks for the glowing recommendation," she said sarcastically. "That's definitely going on my next performance review." 6 months had passed since the rescue mission that everyone thought was impossible, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The Zephyrian colony wasn't just back to normal, it was thriving like never before. What had once been a terrifying death trap was now one of the safest and most productive places in the entire galaxy. All thanks to human protection and ingenuity. The ancient AI had chosen a new name for itself, calling itself Warden, and had somehow managed to become an unofficial member of the Galactic Council. It now provided security services for the entire sector, using its vast network of sensors and defensive systems to keep dangerous threats away from peaceful civilizations. Captain Park Min-ho stood on the observation deck of the brand new orbital station that had been built above Kepler-4 for to be. Through the massive windows, he could watch something that had never existed before in galactic history. Human engineers, with their practical approach to problem-solving, were working side by side with Zephyrian artists, whose sense of beauty and harmony was legendary throughout the galaxy. Together, they were creating structures that were both perfectly functional and absolutely beautiful to look at. Lieutenant Kim Sora walked up to join him at the observation window, carrying an electronic tablet with the daily status reports. "Captain, here's your morning briefing," she said professionally. "All systems are showing green across the board. The Zephyrians have managed to expand their mining operation by over 300% since we got rid of their monster problem. The Warden's defensive systems are running at optimal efficiency with zero security breaches. Somehow, Private Sunho has actually trained the local wildlife to help patrol the colony's perimeter." Captain Park looked down at the planet's surface, through the viewport where he could see an amazing sight. Buddy and his pack of former predators were playing games with Zephyrian children in the beautiful crystal gardens. The creatures that had once been deadly threats were now beloved pets. Their acid-spitting abilities safely neutralized through a biological process that Dr. Song Yuna had developed. The communication system suddenly chimed with an incoming message from Galactic Council headquarters. The main screen flickered to life, showing Ambassador Li Juan sitting in her office back on New Geneva Station. She had a satisfied expression on her face. "Captain Park, I have some interesting news for you," she said, clearly pleased about something. "The Galactic Council has just officially established something called the Human Intervention Protocol. From now on, any situation that gets classified as impossible by conventional military forces will be automatically forwarded to human teams for evaluation and possible action." Captain Park raised an eyebrow with interest. How many requests are we looking at so far? 17 different cases, just this week alone? Lee replied with a slight smile. Apparently, word has spread throughout the galaxy that humans consider the word impossible to be a personal challenge, rather than a warning to stay away. Lieutenant Kim Sora grinned at this news. Well, sir, to be completely honest, Earth was starting to get a little bit boring anyway. It'll be nice to have some variety in our work assignments. Throughout the galaxy, the perspective on humanity had undergone a complete transformation. Species that had once viewed humans as dangerous, Deathworlders from a planet that would kill most beings in minutes, still recognized that humans were dangerous. But now they understood that this danger came packaged with an unexpected and valuable gift. Humans didn't just survive in impossible situations. They actually thrived in them, adapted to them with creative solutions, and somehow managed to make those situations better for everyone else involved. Elder Veltar approached the observation deck, his crystalline form now pulsing with steady, confident light patterns instead of the terrified flickering they had seen during the crisis. Captain Park, my people have been having discussions about something important, he said. We would very much like to establish a formal exchange program between our species. What kind of exchange program did you have in mind? Captain Park asked, with genuine curiosity. We could teach humans about our art and philosophy, our ways of finding beauty and harmony in the universe, Veltar explained thoughtfully, and in return, you could teach us how to look at obstacles and see them as opportunities for growth instead of impossibilities that cannot be overcome. Captain Park Minho smiled as he watched a human engineer patiently showing a young Zephorian child how to properly calibrate mining equipment, while Buddy dozed peacefully in a patch of artificial sunlight that had been specifically designed for the comfort of the native creatures. Elder Veltar, he said warmly, I think that sounds like the beginning of a beautiful and long-lasting friendship. The galaxy had learned something incredibly important from this entire experience. When you need the impossible done, you don't call heroes from legend or mythical beings with supernatural powers, you call humans. They'll probably complain about the working conditions and the lack of decent coffee. They'll make friends with whatever local predators are trying to eat everyone. And somehow, they'll manage to turn what started as a desperate rescue mission into something that looks more like a neighborhood dinner party. And when they're finished solving your impossible problem, they'll ask if you need anything else fixed while they're still in the neighborhood.